Buenos días o buenas noches, en la hora y en el momento que nos estén viendo. Pues realmente es un honor, es una alegría para, para mí compartir este momento, compartir el Sagrado Fuego con ustedes. Hoy estoy en Guatemala, estoy en unas tierras sagradas de los mayas que se llama Santa Cruz del Quiché. Estoy frente a un gran altar que le decimos la gran serpiente. Pues realmente queremos compartir esta fuerza, queremos compartir este mensaje con ustedes para que realmente nuestra familia humana, para que nuestro mundo sea un mundo mejor, sea una humanidad de conciencia y de mucha paz y de mucha felicidad. Muchas gracias. Aquí vamos a hacer una ofrenda del Sagrado Fuego. Y sintonizarnos a la vida. Nuestra ofrenda está lleno de colores, de sabores, de olores, porque nuestra vida es así también, lleno de colores, lleno de sabores, lleno de muchas formas. Como familia humana, somos así, somos tan variados, tan diferentes, tan únicos, tan especiales, pero tan hermanos todos. Pues eso es lo que queremos presentar en esta ofrenda, de muchos colores, de muchos sabores, para nuestra alegría, para nuestra paz, para nuestro bienestar humano. Vamos a ofrecer estos colores, estos sabores, estos inciensos, estos ocotes, para nuestra unión, para nuestra unidad. También vamos a ofrecer velas de color verde que representan. Vamos a ofrecer estas velas por todas las culturas del mundo, para los egipcios, para los fenicios, para los musulmanes, los árabes, los chinos, los japoneses, los ingleses, los alemanes, los franceses, los holandeses, los italianos, por los españoles, por todas las culturas que no conocemos en estas tierras. Pues ofrecemos a toda la cultura roja, a toda la cultura negra, a toda la cultura amarilla, a toda la cultura blanca. Vamos a ofrecer también a todos los continentes, a todo el continente africano, al continente europeo, al continente de Asia, al continente de Oceanía, al continente americano, al Norteamérica, al Centroamérica, al Suramérica y a todas las culturas que habitan sobre la faz de la tierra, en especial a todos sus corazones.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Elizabeth Debold.
And I'm Thomas Steininger. And you saw part of the ceremony that our friend Thomas Mendoza, the German from Guatemala, made for our One World Bearing Witness event in December. If you go to the recordings, you see they've much more of this ceremony, and you also have some translation from Spanish if you, like myself, are not fluent in Spanish, as I'm not at all.
But he, towards the end there, he was speaking about the French, the Italians, offering his invocation and prayer and fire ceremony for all of the different peoples from all the different nations. And then he spoke about Black culture, red culture, yellow culture, white culture on this planet, and offered his prayer and invocation for all of us, which is some of the reason why we asked Thomas to perform the opening an opening fire ceremony as an invocation in One World Bearing Witness, because amazingly enough, as a shaman, a Mayan shaman in Guatemala, he has through his coming into contact with so many people from around the world, he started to include much more of a global welcome and prayer into his ceremony. So we thought that he would be able to provide a beautiful ceremonial context to begin our 24-hour journey in December.
Yes, and welcome to this seminar, which is a direct continuation of the One World Bearing Witness event that we did in December. In fact, the idea why we want to do this is this was a very powerful event for us, and as I heard from many people from different countries, different continents, it was also a powerful event for a lot of other people. And for us, it was a starting point in something that for us is a form of subtle activism. Subtle activism really bring together a spiritual consciousness with awareness of our globe, with awareness of our one humanity. And we thought to use also all these powerful people that contributed in December for this One World Bearing Witness, go with them through these different territories that we covered in these 24 hours and create together more than just a one-off event, but as we envision an ongoing network of bearing witness. And what this means to bear witness, what this means to engage in subtle activism is part of what we want to talk about today.
And also the subtle activism that we're speaking about is for us individually and collectively to expand our capacity to hold the whole of the human experience. Most of us, I mean, this is how we're conditioned. Are conditioned to push away the things that feel painful or difficult, and race after all the things that feel good. And many spiritual practices involve developing our deeper capacity to hold all of what is human. And that developing that capacity for each of us individually and as a collective network, as you were saying, as a network of human beings who care about the direction of human life on this planet, is part of what we're trying to work here, so that we can, from a depth of understanding that there is fundamentally in the deepest way, that there is oneness, there is unity, and we can't just go with that. That skips over the truth of the relative truth that is a very real truth of the division, separation, and destructiveness that is part of our global reality, and even in our neighborhoods or families. That we don't want to jump over that we want to develop and deepen our capacity to hold the whole of the human experience. And that as foundation to bearing witness, which we will speak about, both of which we will speak about in this first introductory session.
And maybe before you also want to explain where we want to go in this 2 hours today, I would like to give you also some technical informations again for everyone who maybe is here the first time, or maybe can't fully remember how to work with this setting that we have with Zoom. As you see, we are 22 people right now on screen. I would appreciate everyone who is not on camera, if you want to switch off your camera, switch on your camera. Of course, if you of some reason prefer not to, that's completely fine. But if you want to, on the lower left corner of your screen, you find the symbol of the camera. And if you click on it, your computer camera goes live and we can see you. And it's always great to see all your faces. So if you want to share your camera, please do so. At the same time, also on the lower left corner of the screen, you see a microphone. And with this microphone, you can mute and unmute your computer. And as we have the setting right now, we would like to leave that up to you when your computer is muted or unmuted. And we highly recommend to be muted when you don't talk, and of course to be unmuted when you talk. So just take control yourself. Please, if you don't talk, stay muted. And if you start to talk, please don't forget to unmute yourself.
Okay. And what we're going to do today is we're going to start with a meditation. After this introduction, we'll do a meditation in order to really ground ourselves. And then we will come back and start with Thomas and I having a conversation that we want to expand so that everyone can participate and engage in collective dialogue. And the core topics are, as we have introduced them thus far, the core topics today will be how is it that I can, or how do we embrace the whole of the human experience as an individual? And what is bearing witness? And then, so we'll have a collective dialogue about that, and then hopefully do our plan is to do some small group work, and then come back and discuss what happened in your groups together and see where we go. Because we need to work this together in order to create both a shared intention and a shared capacity for bearing witness to our shared humanity.
Yeah. And as we do this together, there's also something I really would like to highlight and bring to attention. In the course of these 2 hours, we will talk about things, we will share things, we will exchange things together, but we also will engage in a shared exercise of being together in a shared space of consciousness on screen. And I highly would encourage all of us to just be aware of that. To just be aware the very simple and obvious fact that we are together here right now. I mean, I'm just pointing out the obvious, but sometimes, at least for myself, it's helpful to make oneself aware of the obvious. Just a couple of minutes ago, Elizabeth and myself were just on our own in this room preparing the session. But now we are somehow in the same room that we were before, but at the same time, we share this space with you. We are really together. And this is particularly important to pay attention to, because it is more obvious that this is the case when you all enter our room here in Frankfurt, Germany, and all of a sudden our room is full of people. And wow, you feel the room is changing, the space is changing, everyone's coming in with your energy, with your vibe, with wherever you come from. But this is also the case when we switch on Zoom and when we share this space in a new way on screen. And I don't know how it is for you, but it's definitely the case for me. It changes my experience of being here, seeing all of you. There's an immediate sense of connectedness, seeing your eyes, seeing your faces, at least 2/3 of you who are on camera, but also the other people who are just here with their names at this point. And particular also when we will hear them, we are together, and it is helpful to ongoingly, as we engage with what we're engaging in, to also engage with this shared space of connectedness, of being together as human beings, being part of one humanity. In that, and in the exercise of being conscious of that, we already start, I would say, an act of subtle activism.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's also an important aspect of what we're trying to work here. We now have the technological capacity to meet each other across vast differences. What we're doing here wasn't possible even actually a few years ago. And now that we have this capacity, can we deal with this, or can we recognize that it's not simply that we're looking at pixels moving on a screen, but that there is an essence of each of us and all of us together that comes alive when we take the time to look and to see each other and to recognize, wow, that person is 5,000 miles away from where I am here, and yet there's a presence present. And it's that subtlety of perception that allows us to kind of warm up this cold technology and open up spaces in awareness that are important for us to be able to come together across these distances and cultures and circumstances in order to be together and create this field and this capacity to open and deepen a collective sense of we're in this together.
Because that in itself is, I think, something that is highly needed right now. That the person on the other side of the globe is not just a piece of news I'm reading about or I'm seeing maybe a documentary about, but someone I really can meet. And it was part of the powerful experience for myself, hearing all these people on One World bearing witness, from the Philippines to Guatemala, and being with them, which is different than hearing about them. And as we're doing what we're doing right now, just to acknowledge, it is just a fact. I am with you in this very moment, and you are with me, with us. in this very moment. It doesn't matter at all that you are sitting in wherever you are. We are really together, whatever that means, but it is true. You are with me. As I see you and as you hear me, we are with you, and we all are together. And to really let that land is the meeting point of us as one humanity. This is a starting point where I'm really deeply convinced that this has the capacity to build culture in a deep, conscious way.
Shall we
Yes.
switch into the meditation? Okay, for the meditation, what we're going to use as our way into meditation. We're going to use the invocation that, and I'm over here on another computer working on this. We're going to use the invocation that David Nickel offered in One World Bearing Witness as the opening, and we want so allow what he's saying to kind of wash over you. Don't become overly concerned with what it is that he's saying. Don't get your mind involved. But David offered a very beautiful and powerful.
Do you want to say one or two words about who David is?
Yeah, David Nickel is Australian. He's the author of a book called Subtle Activism that we found quite inspiring, where he documents how.
With quite inspiring, you mean very inspiring.
Yeah, yes. I think in British English, quite means not at all, but in American English, it means very. He documents how collective meditation events, different ways that human beings can access more subtle realms of reality, how they have real-time impacts on human behavior. So, for example, there's well-known documentation that that in places that have had consistent collective meditation for the sake of the community, that crime rates have dropped. And it's not simply that the people who might be committing the crimes are now doing meditation. It's a larger, a more widespread phenomenon. The essence of culture is that which is between us that we can't see and often don't even know, and it's not even conscious to us. What subtle activism is attempting to do is to create a different environment that exists between us, in order that we respond and relate differently, coming out of that different environment. So that's what his work has been about. He's now living in California. He has a course coming up, and you'll hear about that at some point. But we asked him for One World Bearing Witness not to give a talk about subtle activism. And this is what we asked everyone who was involved in One World Bearing Witness. The point was not to talk about your thing, or talk about the work that you've been doing on change or on sacred activism or so forth, but was to instruct and invoke, to offer a prayer, to offer a way that we can be together in a calling and evoking of another dimension. And that's what David does in this beautiful in this beautiful invocation. So let me get that up here and on the screen. Oops, let me stop him from speaking, and then we will be together. Now, There we go. Okay, sit and comfortably, but with your back straight, your feet on the floor, eyes closed or half open, unfocused, looking at the floor in front of you, and allow David's words to wash over you.
We engage today in a great act of global subtle activism. We are learning how to harness the power of our consciousness to bear witness to the reality of life on Earth, to acknowledge our differences and our pain, to heal through compassion, to feel together our deeper unity, to open to something new. In this moment of great transition in our world, of widespread challenge and fragmentation and division, but also of tremendous creativity and potential, we open to a new way. We are supporting each other today to open together to the depth of our true yearning for sanity and love to prevail on this earth. We are daring to open together today to the power of our hope that something new can be born on earth. The earth is listening to the sincerity of our prayers. The cosmos is listening to the power of our longing. Hear our true desire, our true heart's aching for the truth of our deeper nature to govern our world. Our longing is a power. Our yearning is a power. Our hope is a power. Our joy is a power. Our silence is a power. In our shared global silence, we are an opening to the infinite. And through us flow all the powers of the cosmos. In our shared global silence, we are a portal. And through us flow all the qualities of the inner dimensions into our outer world. Through our shared silence, a subtle energy arises that comes from the heart of the mystery itself. In our silence, the seeds of a new way forward for humanity are being planted deep in the fertile psyche, fertile soil of our collective psyche. We have faith that these seeds will one day grow into a beautiful forest of enlightened global culture. In this sacred planetary field, we bear witness to the beauty and the struggle of human existence. We invoke all those human beings throughout our history who have taken a stand on this earth for justice, for truth, for freedom. By and from the sacred authority of our love and our humanity, we the people call forth the best of this living generation to meet this moment with all that we have and all that we are. We engage today
Okay. Mm.
One thing that really stood out for me and still is with me when David is saying that our longing is a power
Mm.
and silence is a power. Just to acknowledge that and the truth of that the longing of our heart and the shared silence and the shared consciousness is a power, it's a force. Is in itself an entry point to understand what subtle activism is about.
Mm. Yeah, because he's pointing to something that is he's pointing both to this longing and that the silence between us just now as dimensions of human experience that we are meeting in. And in that meeting, there can be a recognition that this isn't a silence that I own. This is not my silence. This is not and this is not a longing that I own. That together coming together in the recognition that there is a longing in us and between us for something new, something different, for a potential that could come from our recognition of being together, of being not separate, that there is something powerful, that the power in that is a power inherent in human experience. When it begins to kind of connect or be realized beyond myself as an individual. And I think this bearing witness. What is bearing witness? Bearing witness is a bringing of one's open-heartedness to acknowledge usually the extremes of the human experience, either the most transcendent and sublime, what people call God or the divine, and the effects of extremely destructive and traumatic experiences. Bearing witness is usually spoken of in relationship to those extremes, that I as an individual stand here and acknowledge this divine or this destruction and see you am willing to be there in my presence, in open-heartedness with you in your pain, in the pain that's happened here, or in the glory that has been revealed. I'm willing to stand for that. And that's a bearing witness that is usually individual. It's my act. And what we're talking here about is, can we begin to create a field together in which we can embrace those extremes and bear witness collectively? And that power of silence and that power of our longing is the foundation for such a bearing witness.
I really would like to make a close look what the term bearing witness holds, because I really think it in itself holds a power. And as you explained, bearing witness usually used for something that is out of the normal, something that usually maybe we close our eyes to, we don't acknowledge, but when we look closely, we have to admit that we are aware of this. And this is true for, let's call it a divine or a transcendent, that quite often it's easier to ignore that we are aware of the existence of the presence of the transcendent, of the divine in our own experience. Because if you really let that in, this is asking us for something. It's something that doesn't let us just go on as we do. The acknowledgement that this dimension of the transcendence, of oneness, of sacredness is real, is something that, if I let it in, does something. That's a power.
There's an implication.
There's an implication to it, and in the implication is the power of it. At the same time, bearing witness to the fact that we have real problems, that there's real pain, that to some degree we are in a mess. It's easier to just stay in one comfort zone and, okay, that's happening somewhere, maybe but to really bear witness that there's real pain happening in all different dimensions, not just in the global south. We can name it. Every one of us is very aware of it. And every one of us is aware that it's very often more comfortable to just ignore it and just pretend, oh, I'm fine. I have my salary. I have my apartment. I have my partner. I have whatever. I'm fine. But if we are honest, we know that this is the case. And I think this is the power of the bearing witness, to be honest. It's also the term witness. I'm witness to something, which also demands something. If you're witness of something in a kind of a criminal context, you are asked to kind of say what happened, even if you don't like it or if it has consequences. You are witness to something, so please tell the truth, so that the truth can do its work, show what justice is. So bearing witness has this power to open up truth on all ends. And then the second factor that you also brought in, that the bearing witness, that we also can bear witness to the fact that we are together in that. And just seeing you nodding when I was speaking about the different things, I see your acknowledgement that this bearing witness is not something that is my private sense of something. We are together in this. And there's also the fact of bearing witness to that. We are together in this. It's not my Thomas personal bearing witness to something, but we on the screen, and just not we on the screen, we as humanity, if we look closely, we are together in this. And then we have to deal with the consequences. What does this, if we are together in this, what does this mean? What does this implicate? And that's most likely outside of the comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point.
And part of the reason why, and this may be jumping a little bit, but part of the reason why it's outside of our comfort zone is that we don't know how to respond often.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what to do. What do I do with the fact that the world is in the mess that it is? And what do I do with that in relationship to the transcendent experiences that I've had? How does that come back to me, to us?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we go with that?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, all of this brings me to Bernie Glassman. Bernie Glassman is the Roshi Bernie Glassman is the head of the Zen Peacemakers Order, which is a new Zen order, and his work involves a lot of bearing witness. He's done bearing witness at Auschwitz. He's now doing bearing witness on Native American reservations. But he speaks about 3 tenets of bearing witness. One is not knowing. The second is bearing witness, which is a little bit, tautological. And the third is right action. But and that right action is not something that one knows in advance. It's out of this open-hearted willingness to embrace these extremes and to be able to hold that space
Mm-hmm.
open without knowing
Mm-hmm.
that something can happen, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah. And I really think what Bernie Glassman brings here as one of these pillars of bearing witness, this not knowing, is very fundamental to all of it. And it also in itself holds the spiritual dimension of this. Because again, if we look closely, we all have the tendency to create an illusion of everything being under control and understood. I construct my world in a way that I think I'm in control and I understand and I know what's right, what's wrong. I know what's up, what's down. It's all cool. It's all cool. I know. But part of the spiritual experience is the fact I don't. There's a deep recognition. I don't know. And part of the spiritual strength I find is to allow this to be and embrace it. The ones of you who have been at the One World Bearing Witness event in the morning, in the ending of it, I'm sure remember as much as I do, Brother Steindl, David Steindl-Rast, who said, the one thing we are all exposed to is the mystery. And then he said, we in the Catholic tradition, we call it God. Mm-hmm. He said, he held both. He held his Catholic tradition and he held the universality of this universal human experience, the mystery, the not knowing. And also how the not knowing really can unravel us. Mm-hmm. And how spiritual strength is the capacity to trust. Mm-hmm. And to trust the unknowing of the mystery of the sacred, but also trust that in the unknowing with the pain, that there is reason to hope in this. And that's spiritual conviction. There is reason to hope, whatever this is. Again, Brother Steindl-Rast said something that never left me. Said the most important message of the Bible is not to love your neighbor, the neighbor like yourself. Mm-hmm. The most important message of the Bible and the most used sentence in the New Testament is, "You shall." How is it?
Do not fear.
Do not fear is the English. Do not fear, and do not fear in the face of not knowing the mystery and the pain is what really holds a power to, again, bring it back to David. If we are together in that and we see this is a human potential, a shared, not my personal, a shared human potential, you see the power of sacred subtle activism.
Mm. Because we're talking about creating a shared context, and a shared context is a culture, a shared context in which we recognize that we are not separate from the human experience. And what that means is it actually takes a little bit of unpacking, I think. That we tend to, and particularly in the West, and we tend to see ourselves as individuals, as having unique experience, and in a certain sense that's true. I don't have your exact experience, and yet the template of being human, the mystery of what is life, why am I here, what will it mean when I die, these fundamental questions are questions that we all share. And I think when even at that simple level, when brothers David Steininger says we all share the mystery, we're all confronted by what is life. And each culture has its own ways of trying to avoid the existential implications of that question. We have myths, we have stories that we tell, we have families that we invest in, we have different things that we do in order to say, this is going to last longer than me, and so therefore I get my own immortality through this. I think Eugene Becker in writing what was his book about death, spoke about our immortality projects. Most cultures are immortality projects, trying to keep us from this this grappling with this mystery. But it's doing so is what defines us, or what makes us human. And it's our the template for humanity, the feelings that we have, the aversions that we have, the fears that we have about life, about death, are all are one. No one is unique in that. And it's in that not uniqueness that we can claim a deeper relationship with our humanity. And it's through the recognition not of I'm the only one that can do this because I have incarnated as I am here, et cetera, that tends to be the source of our deeper humanness. It's the places in which we're the same, the ways that we all bleed, the ways that we all experience joy, the ways that we all experience longing for something that gives us meaning.
And I'm really looking forward also to afterwards come into dialogue about this, because to my understanding, this is the source or the foundation of our One World in Dialogue project. To really use this, this setting that we have right now, to come together on a global scale, to realize in face-to-face dialogue that we are together in this. That both is true. We have individual answers. Mm-hmm. We also have cultural individual answers. East Asian answers are different than European answers. The European answers are different than African or indigenous American answers to that. They are all built out of our individual and our collective biographies, how we as humans develop answers, but they are all answers to the same questions. And just the realization of the existential reality that we are together in this, that we are not divided, but together in this, and not on a theoretical level, but on a face-to-face level, allows us to hold both, to hold the recognition of our unity as humanity, because as humans, we're exposed to the same existential situations. Everything that we are talking about is universal human. And the respect of different perspectives on that may be Christian, that may be Hindu, that may be New Age, that may be atheistic, that may be humanistic, that may be, you name it. But they are honest attempts to deal with the fact that we are human and that we are conscious part of this universe. And there is a possibility to hold this in plurality and unity as a global dialogue of humans and cultures. And to do this together creates a source of respect and unity, and hold something where all these differences can be held, not only held, they can be developed. Because my identity, being Central European Christian roots, changes when I'm exposed to other answers. And when I see the dignity of these other answers, not necessarily that I convert to anything, but being exposed to the beauty of the plurality of our world culture makes us more mature, makes us more human.
There were responses, I think. We'd like to engage in this in a collective dialogue. So your responses, your thoughts, let's see where we can go together.
And again, just to repeat it, you have your microphone on the lower left corner of your screen. And if you want to jump in, please feel free, so you can unmute yourself. And let's have this an open forum.
We saw a nodding of heads. Why?
I did want to continue with what you just said, Tom. What I thought I heard you saying was that to become more mature is to become more human.
Yeah.
And that just kind of hit me, because I thought maybe, I'm striving and trying to experience who I am and hold everything and together. I guess I thought maybe becoming more mature somehow was transforming human, not becoming more human. So I'd love to hear more about the idea of being mature seems really important to me, to being available, to being present, to being useful. And I always assumed that human was weak, perhaps weakness or something. I don't know. That was really new to me. So I'd love to hear more about what everyone is saying about that, because it just kind of hit me.
I think you gave the key with the last thing. You just said that quite often we think human means weakness. And I think humanness holds our weakness. And is also our capacity to hold our weakness. It's not to deny our weakness, but the capacity to also hold our weakness in a mature way makes us more human. And in that sense, it's just the way I would phrase it. Of course, it transforms also our humanity, because it opens up new possibilities of what it means to be human.
Yes.
In that sense, transforming our humanity and becoming more human, from my point of view, means the same thing. it unfolds more the potential of what it can mean to be human. And that, to see it, that being human does, I mean, a newborn child is human, and is something very beautiful, and you wouldn't like to deny its humanity, but there's something where if a child does not grow, it denies part of its potential of being human. If a child doesn't, if you're 50 and still a child, you're denying parts of your humanity. It's not that you stay human because you stay a child. There's something of who you are and who you could be in all of that, including your weakness. It's not denying that part, because embracing and dealing with the fact that weakness is part of us, I would say is part of what this all holds.
Mm.
Thank you.
Perhaps in the same vein, or in a similar context, I found in this invocation the yearning, the longing, and the hope. As he introduced them, they are sources of power. And I think in our Western culture, we often, or maybe we are even raised to think of these yearning, longing, and hope as lack. I think. And that makes us that's another motor of individualization. That we feel alone with our yearnings, longings, and hopes. And in that, with regard to that, I find this invocation and also this discussion right now is very special. That we can see these things as a source of hope. And then when he went on to speak about it has the power to perhaps plant seeds that can grow. And I found that very special today.
It's interesting because you think all of us here, and we're a small group, but there were several thousand people who were interested in One World Bearing Witness, and that we're all reaching for something. We do see something missing, and there probably always will be something missing, because our capacity to realize or wholeness or perfection, whatever that is, or something that is that is fully whole is through who we are, fairly limited. So there's always going to be a sense of I'm reaching for something, but that
attention.
Yeah, there's a tension in that, yes. But that tension is a growth place.
Yes.
That tension is a pull to growth, a pull to embrace more, a pull to encompass more, and there is a movement. You could say we represent a movement in the human experience itself. Everyone, I would say, all human beings experience some form of longing, some form of yearning. It's often interpreted in ways that one's culture understands. My longing is for my perfect mate, or my longing is for fame or something. But the nature of the longing that we seem to share is a desire for something to come to maturity, fruition, togetherness, in our recognition of each other on this planet as a whole, in our recognition of some deeper sense of being one, of being together, recognizing the difficulties, recognizing the obstacles, and that isn't a personal thing. And in our highly individuated culture, we're taught to see that longing as mine, my thing. I need to figure it out myself. But the deeper root of it is something that is a force, as he said, is a power in our humanness. And there's something very powerful when we switch from seeing this as solely individual to recognizing it as a movement in human consciousness itself.
I'm noticing as I sit here in my longing and the group longing, and trying to sort of feel into the immensity of that longing, as well as the immensity of what it feels from this perspective I'm coming from right now, is it's so huge what we are faced with. And I don't know what to do, and I again, this is a perspective, so I don't know what to do from this perspective, and it feels like we don't know what to do, and there's such an uncomfortableness and a desire to turn away that I'm recognizing in my everyday life, that there are things I turn away from in order to avoid this uncomfortableness of not knowing. So when we come together in this not knowing, and the uncomfortableness of the hugeness of what we are up against, how do we prevent ourselves from either turning away or going into some hopeless place? Like what it feels like there's some trust in something larger that at this moment I'm not quite in touch with, although often in these groups I am. So I guess what I'm saying is, this is something I come up against in my life, and I'm coming up against it here. I can like say, I don't know what to do. I think I got to go look for the answer somewhere else. I think I'll leave now. And yet in this dialogue work, I've seen a glimpse of something else, something that tells me, this is what I have to do. I have to face this and work to evolve consciousness. Now I've put a name to it, but can you kind of get what I'm saying? That there's a deep uncomfortableness, and yet I'm here with you in this deep uncomfortableness, not knowing what to do, sensing that in our longing in there's something really good that I need to stay with. So I think I'm going to stop there. So I don't have a question. I don't have an answer. I'm in you, and I'm here with you, and it's uncomfortable.
No, Virginia, I completely hear you, because there's something really which is part of the task, to not be overwhelmed by the bigness of this. Because there's a way where one can create a perspective. This is so huge, it's just too big for me. The only way to deal with it is to turn my back. And that is understandable, because fact is, we won't solve it right now. We won't. And it's quite an uncomfortable position. And so how do we do this, that this can be a way that really is livable, let's put it that way? Because we are also just, in that sense, humans. We are not superhumans. We are humans in this. And I very much understand what you're saying. And this is also because the context we are meeting in here right now is not just the dialogue work that we are developing, although this is part of it. This is really bringing forth this global reality our social reality. It's confronting us with the bigness of our global and human situation. And this is more than dialogue work, although dialogue work is a central part of this. So this context has its specific challenge to do that. And I think, again, and it's just my personal response to that, the answer I see in the trust in the mystery. And my personal understanding of this, and excuse me if I just bring it that way, but it's just the way I really often relate to this, is what we're talking about is the true, the good, and the beautiful. And the true, the good, and the beautiful, as being expression of the sacred, let's put it that way, they find their way if you just open this. I don't have to have the answer. The power of truth is that the truth just has to be itself to find its way. A lie you have to hold up, you have to pretend, you have to create, but the truth is just basically finding its way somehow. Beauty is finding its way just somehow. Beauty is finding its way just somehow. All it needs from me to have the trust. I don't have to have the answer. And there's something in recognizing that the coming together as humans in this way, we can be agents of that, individually and collective. It doesn't take away the comfort, but it makes it livable. Because I don't have to have the answer, I just have to have the trust. And I find, and we can talk about it, it's a legitimate trust, it's not a naive trust. And in that, I think the power of this practice unfolds itself.
What
I also, please speak.
Go ahead.
what I was nodding to at the beginning, Elizabeth, was when you talked about our unity, but also not whitewashing over the divisions, the deep divides between humans. And my dilemma when I'm in company with people who are very racist, divisive, protective, is I want them to be like me. And I know that I want to reach out to their humanness, but sometimes it feels almost like manipulative, like I need you to be different, or I want you to be different, or if you just saw things the way that I do, and we get lost. And so the conversation, it's not that I've even had these kind of conversations. Mostly I step away from those kind of situations, and people who are like intractable, it seems, but a way to breach the difference with common humanness sometimes feels like it's avoiding the obvious. It's like we're all, what you talked about, Thomas, is we all no longer can deny the risk of nuclear war with North Korea. I mean, we can't deny it, but it is denied in normal life because it isn't spoken about in normal life. So like over the holidays, I was with a lot of gatherings where I didn't speak my own knowledge or my own what's at the forefront of how I'm seeing the world and experiencing the world. I spoke about people's kids and what they're doing and soccer and all this, but so there's an awareness of what I'm holding, but there's also an interaction with people in family situations and social situations. And I don't want to be artificial, but I don't also want to come across as superior or as you have to be different you have to change. So sometimes I just keep my guard, or keep just occult silence or something, and just try to be a nice person and talk about the weather and food or whatever, until something comes up. Now on Facebook, I always am putting things, I don't just share posts, I write my own feelings. So that's sort of a dilemma of breaching the difference between humans. So that's one thing that I was nodding about, that I ponder on a lot. But the other thing is this factor, Thomas Hubel calls it factor X, like when people come together, the synchronicity, like we're allowing the truth to come through as we come together in desire for it. We allow it. It isn't a longing for it, it's an allowing of it to come as it's almost like when an egg and a sperm come together, it allows the life to come in. But as we come together, it allows the truth to come in, and that's where my hope is. And so I do feel like sometimes I'm leading a double life, in that when I'm in public, I don't talk about my views that much. I try to be in certain ways, but then when I'm in a group like this, it's like, this is my, I'm going to say higher self, truest self. This is like, that's why I nod. It's like, yes, this is the soul alignment. This is quickens my heart. And so those are just some like last night I was at dinner with really like-minded people, but we didn't talk at all about, we talked a little bit about the march that happened across the world, but we didn't talk about anything except, are you taking a trip this year? Just the normal stuff. But yet I was trying to just hold space too. But I don't want to isolate myself when I'm with groups of other people by my own spiritual bubble either. So this is things that I experience as I embrace all of this.
No, I mean, I think this is why creating collectives where we can work this together becomes so important. Because we are living in contexts that are where there's an enormous amount of division. And I think there also is an art to engaging with other human beings with very different perspectives than one's own, and still meeting in a shared recognition that we're that there's certain things that we all are working from or engaging with, and are doing it in different ways, and often with different levels of resource or different capacities. But our work here is how can we hold more? How can we hold more? How can we realize? I think one of the keys to holding more actually comes from, and I would say to include you in this, Virginia, also, is recognizing that the impulse to pull away or the not knowing what to do is where we're at right now. It isn't a personal thing. This is a part of you in wanting to pull back or not knowing how to have a conversation, are at an edge of of our capacity to develop our humanness further. That this is where we are. And there's something about that both takes some of maybe the personal shame or the personal discomfort away from it, but it becomes a different kind of discomfort. It becomes more of a tension rather than a discomfort. It's like, oh, somehow can we together learn how to do this? And to do this doesn't mean to fix it. To do this means to hold it, to see the things that cause us discomfort or cause us to feel alienated, and hold it in something that we trust more deeply, which is life that we are not separate from. Because often we talk about the mystery or the life process as though it's something outside ourselves that we have to go reach and then bring to ourselves. But we are that. And that recognition and the recognition of where we are in terms of our own limits, and that being where we are as human beings, is a powerful, creates a powerful impulse for me just to say, let's stay in this together and find our way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, as a response to you, Ellen, this is exactly why we try to engage with initiatives like this, to create circles where, to use our language, where we together can bear witness in an outspoken way, because there's a mutual understanding of what needs our bearing witness in all these dimensions that we talked about. And I find it, for myself, empowering and healing to be together with people where there's a mutual understanding in its plurality that both the sacred, the pain, the global dimension is something that needs me, needs us, without having the answer. There's something in creating these circles of understanding that allows me, in other circumstances where I meet a complete not understanding of this perspective, to find the right way to respond, because it's not about telling other people that they're wrong.
Yeah, of course.
It's just finding mutual ground of understanding, and that's the foundation of a dialogical perspective. To find a mutual ground of understanding. That doesn't mean that there is not a red line. If somebody really that there's a red line where one really has to be ready also for conflict. That's a thing to talk about itself, where you really also have to have the guts to really say this is a case for conflict, period. But even in the case for conflict, there's the longing for understanding. That's an interesting thing, that also conflict you can hold in a different way. You can have a conflict basically to get rid of the other, but you can hold conflict again also to try to create understanding in the end.
Yeah.
But to have the soul strength to do this, we need community, communion, and to create circles like this that can hold this in a global scale with all the challenges that we are faced with, allows me to stay in this in a different way. That's why an engagement like this, I find nourishing, empowering. And that's why we're doing this.
And it actually creates something in human consciousness itself. And I think that's also part of the subtle activism, that our capacity to build a muscle, as you could call it, a soul strength, that doesn't shy from the truth, and on either side, the truth of the destruction and division, and the truth of the extraordinary potentiality and transcendent unity that is the foundation, is the ground of everything. Underneath all of that building that muscle creates something you can that in human consciousness that can become a place of before thought reference, that can become something on this planet. You know, at every major cultural shift, I'm reminded of Voltaire. At every major cultural shift, there's a transformation when history is made. Let's put it that way. And I'm referring to a book that I've been reading. But when history is made, when one is making history, what we're doing is we're trying to shift things that are the subject of reflective thought to being a before thought or prior to thought assumption. right now we don't live on the planet with a prior assumption of our shared humanity.
Oh, right, right, right.
If we can do that and have that awareness become more and more a reference point for us as human beings, that is history making. That is transformative. Like from the beginning of the women's movement in the West, where women where in the 50s, if you asked if men and women should receive the same pay for the same job, most people, men and women, said that's crazy. No, men have to support their families, so they need to earn more than women do. But now, how many, a few decades later, if you ask people, should men and women be paid the same amount for the same work, it's like a stupid question.
Yeah.
For most people. But it's that kind of shift that we're talking about, that there's a potential. And when the people who were involved in making that change were a handful, really. There were a couple hundred of women who began that movement. It's making a shift to recognize that we are, each of us is the whole of the human experience, which is an implication of what we're saying here, and that we together want to hold the fact that wherever we are on the spectrum, that we share a humanity, we share a longing, we share the mystery of life together, no matter where we are on the planet. That would be a radically different place from which policy, from which human interaction, relationships, et cetera, would come from.
Yeah, for sure.
It may seem kind of wild at this point.
It actually makes it seem very doable. So I appreciate that's a gorgeous example about the shift in perspective toward women 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It's not that long ago. So I thank you for that. Two things. One is that kind of in reference to what Virginia was saying is that what it seems to me that what we're learning to do, the doing that we get frustrated with and we get frightened by, and is mostly this, just to not turn away. The doing is to stand there and bear witness.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is a doing, because that shifts consciousness about, shifts our idea, the underlying idea, the pre-thought idea. And then the other piece, kind of in reference to what both Margot and Carol and Ellen brought in too, is this sense of humility, that this shared humanity, this humility about being human, about having yearnings and longings, that's very contrary to the culture that we've been in for the last while. By approaching this with humility and standing in the truth with humility and without being superior or knowing more, but just being human, I think is a part of this, that it's is that core strength of standing in the truth without pretense, without it being more than that. It's just true.
Mm.
And I love what we were saying about the red line. I'd never heard that example before, but to me, when I heard that, it ennobled choice. It ennobles choice, because in determining the red line that I can stand up to or make that my battle or whatever, that just you don't cross. Where is that? Without exclusion, excluding anyone in terms of an oppositional force, but there's an inclusion there, and there's red lines, which is really a great way to look at it, because then there's choice, but there's choice because we've created this place, there's choice that has a ground of unity in it. And I think this is a really big deal. I've never really seen that, but be able to make choices in this feels like it's a helpful thing. And I'll be thinking about that red line.
Right.
It's great the way you summarize that or elaborated on that, Margot. You know, that it's a red line within the context of unity.
Yes.
And toward understanding, but a red line nonetheless.
Yes.
Because it needs quite something to hold that. Because usually the red line is where basically this is the end of unity.
Right.
So how can you say, yes, there's a red line, but it does not end unity?
Yes.
How do you hold this together? That's quite something. In fact, it's worth investigating together how to do that, because that's a human skill to develop. And again, it's related to what Elizabeth brought in, and I really liked also Ellen's your response to that. It is still a very unusual perspective to really start with the prior unity of us as humans all together, to really let in even before the division, without denying that we are separate, we are individuated, we are different. But before that, there's a unity in our human experience, and to hold this and see, just to hold this as an assumption for us as a global culture changes how we approach everything. And it needs people who hold that. And again, as you said, with the example of the women's movement, every time when a new perspective is brought into human culture, it's held by small circles first. If there are small circles for any kind of cultural innovation, we're seeded by small circles of people who could see something others could not see yet. And at least I am deeply convinced, but we can talk about this, that this is a perspective that is needed to realize the prior unity of all of us, and to see and talk about our divisions in context of that. And to see this in world culture, just by talking about it and just by being aware of it, just whatever, doing the appropriate thing by holding this perspective, has a transformative power.
And it's very implicating, because it's not guaranteed what's going to happen. That's also part of the not knowing. It's not like, oh, we just do this and everything's going to be wonderful. It calls for something. We need, knowing this is implicating. It's like, well, what am I going to do about it? Even if the doing is just what we were saying. How do I do that more? How do I deepen and further this? How can we do that?
Maybe this is also
a good.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Go for it.
Because we would like also to engage in smaller groups again. And how long would we do that?
Let's see. How about for half an hour? Half an hour. Yeah.
For half an hour, and to engage with this question: how to do that? How to hold this perspective of prior unity, and not denying, not overstepping the reality of division in all of that. Because this kind of coming together that I would call subtle or spiritual activism is the capacity to hold that in our capacity to be in relationship to whoever. And our dialogue work, as I understand it, is a training field how to do this in a small context. To really go into any kind of relationship field and realize that there is a oneness in this already, that it's not just an idea of oneness, That's why we always think you have to develop your antenna, that there is a consciousness field, that there's a gestalt of the whole, that is already there. It just needs to be self-aware to really unfold its own power. Mm-hmm. But people who have the capacity to see that can bring this already existing non-division to awareness, and in that way unleash the power in that. And that's part of the cultural transformation that is possible. And I see it again and again in our group work, where people come from a very usual personal perspective into a dialogue and hold their opinions, and they mean well, but they have a certain perspective. But at a certain point, when dialogue work is successful, there's the awareness of a shared field of consciousness that I'm not separate from, and that transforms completely the atmosphere in a room. Because all of a sudden, synergy is possible that wasn't possible before, because people start to respond to the synergy, because they're not blind to the synergy, because they're aware of the wholeness and the living wholeness. And my assumption, it's just a working assumption, is that this is true in small circles like this, but in the end it's true on a global scale. If we engage in our cultural dialogue in awareness that there is a wholeness that is capable of holding all these differences, the way how we engage with the difference is completely different, because it opens the eye and opens the sense for the possibility of synergy. And in that, conflict becomes creative, because all of a sudden, the point where we don't understand each other is the point where really something new is needed. And when you hold into that, quite often, something new is opening up. Why? Because we don't collapse into conflict. We allow it to be a creative tension in that. And in that, in the small and the big, I think that the dialogical capacity holds something that is important for what we're doing here.
So what's the question? What's the question for the groups?
How can we do this?
How can we do this? Okay.
How can we do this? And maybe hold it open like that. The different ways of interpretation of what this question means, I think that's good too. And it's also just take the question as a guiding line. But if you just develop it in your own way, I'm sure you find your way there.
And so we're going to need just a minute or two to set the groups up and stay. I hope that most of you will stay for the groups, because oftentimes this is where people sort of peel off. But because it's a great experience of being able to come closer with people who you don't know. So I'm going to share my screen for just a minute or two with something delightful from One World Bearing Witness, and then in just a minute we'll be back with the groups.
Are we coming back into the big group?
Afterwards, yes, we'll come all back together. Thank you. Thank you for asking that. Okay. Do you know somebody?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Good to see you again in the big group. It's good that nearly everyone came back. Usually people tend in the small groups kind of take the time to leave. We also would like to use this time right now to also kind of bring to your awareness that this course is a free course, but we do appreciate your support. So if you feel inclined to support this, because we thought to really make it possible for everyone, but on the other hand, also we only can make it possible if we also have the financial resources to do so. So if you feel inclined to do so, on the website of One World Bearing Witness, you find a very easy donation button where you can find different ways how to support this also financially. Financial support of this project is not the only support you can give. Just showing up, being here, sharing this is the main support, but we also do appreciate the financial means that we do need to make this happen. So having said that, we'll come back.
Is there a link on the email where to donate?
Not on the email, but on the website, there are donate buttons on every page at the bottom.
In English?
I'm not completely sure. I think part English. I think as soon as you log in on PayPal, for example, it turns into English.
Okay.
But you have to take the risk of jumping.
Yeah, it's like what am I signing up for here?
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless there's money unless there's numbers involved. If there are numbers involved, don't do it. But if there aren't, just keep going.
Good. So would be great to hear from your conversation. How can we do this? This was the question.
Mm-hmm. Whatever this is.
Whatever this is. Does anyone to share your conversations and your insights? And again, lower left button, you find the microphone symbol and you can mute and unmute yourself there.
Yeah, we had a very small group, Isha and me, and I'm not exactly sure if I speak his or her name right. We were together, and we could only chat due to some tech issues.
Oh, really?
And and I found that a very basic experience with the question of how do we do this. And that is something that, and we had a very interesting chat about, how do we do this? I was visible and audible. My partner wasn't. So I'm having an experience with, I know there is somebody, and this somebody is talking to me. And I cannot see this somebody, and I cannot hear this somebody. And but taking everything that we had in the big group, for example, the trust, like put trust into that there is actually somebody on this other end, and trust that we, in this process of, okay, how can we engage in the conversation here? That was a very, it's just a very basic experience with this question that we had. And that connected back to an experience I had earlier in the big group, which is actually, I landed in the very beginning already, actually in a almost new experience of being present with all of us here, which came, I don't know what it actually kicked off. Yeah, Isha is also sharing something via chat. That's cool.
So there was someone on the other side.
Yes, there is someone on the other side.
And responding.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Great.
Isha said, I very much felt Aneta's presence even while I was typing. I am a she, Isha in Arkansas. Thanks, Isha.
Thanks, Isa. And we can see your photo right now, so we can see at least the photo views. But sorry,
you hadn't finished.
You had not finished. Aneta.
Aneta, did you want to say more?
Yeah. So, yeah, and it's something that I felt like, but I'm talking. I don't know if it's coming through.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we hear you.
Do you get me? Do you hear me?
Yes,
we do.
Yes, we do.
Seems to be some time delay, but yes.
Okay, good. Sorry. So,
oops,
there seem to be some technical glitches.
Actually, she's muted now.
okay, I'm back.
Okay, good.
Hello?
Keep going.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure. Am I back?
Yes.
Okay, great, good. Yeah, it's everything about the basic, basic technicalities of being together here. And one experience that paid into it was landing in an experience of being present with all of you in our conversation that I felt as much more physical this time. And I just wanted to point that out again, because I think one basic, very important part, but also danger in meeting in these groups, and that also is one share about how do we do this, is in my experience that I'm only present basically in that dimension of my being. It's my thoughts and my head that get sucked into the computer somehow, but I kind of cut off everything that's lower and maybe under my heart, right? But I'm not really present with my whole body or with my entire being once I'm once I'm meeting with people that are not in the same room with me but are in the same virtual room. And I like to be very thorough with these things, and I realized that probably through the meditation, and I don't know what exactly it was today, what it changed, but one way of how I can actually shift and arrive in a shared intention is when we meet in such virtual spaces, is that I really take care that I'm here with my entire being, meaning first of all my entire body, and with all of my senses, even though it means in some way that I need to abstract a little bit, because sometimes I don't, the screen is never big enough to see all of you, or sometimes we don't see each other, as it was with Isha, or don't even hear each other. But it's an interesting exploration to just see, okay, how is that actually? First of all, how am I present with this space? And that definitely it's a different starting point for me. And it's far away from all of the philosophical thoughts. But it's a very precious experience today, sorry.
That was your body.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Great.
That's actually, I really appreciate what Annette is saying. I think it's very true because we're doing this internationally. And so the only way we can do this is through this miracle of, technology. And so, yeah, we have to bring our whole body. So with each of us bringing our whole selves into our voice, right? Into our voice, into our appearance, but even just our voice, we could do this on the telephone. How much even better to be able to at least see each other. But by bringing our whole selves, our whole body, our whole mind, our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts have to be fully here. It's and with each of us doing that, it becomes different. It becomes quite powerful and real in a way that it wouldn't be if we were just watching TV or something.
Yeah, definitely.
I just wanted to thank our group. It was such a great group. And each person brought something different that changed the whole atmosphere that we were experiencing. And I wanted to, in particular, they were all, but the idea of knowing how to include pain in how we, Carol brought this in about how we, it's not like a spiritual practice, it's just a feel-good thing. I know that none of us are doing that, but to really face into the wholeness of it, all aspects of it without avoiding. And she particularly mentioned that. It's very appreciative of that.
Thanks, Margot.
So I could start sharing a little of what our group did. We kind of circled around the importance of prior unity, and how when with others, how difference does not have to indicate separation, so that if we are coming from the truth of prior unity, when the tension of difference arises, we could see that if we see difference as separation, that would kind of be a mistaken interpretation. So that for me especially, and I think for the others too, that coming from prior unity is really helpful. The other thing that we came to was the importance of trust. So there's bearing witness to the pain of this global situation and its many different painful areas, and then there is also the bearing witness to the truth of the mystery and unity. So trusting, it seems like the old paradigm, or the way that we're accustomed to living, is with this mistrust, and we must control. So what we're learning here is, or what we are being supporting here is this trust in the mystery. So mystery is a really good word. So that then there's the longing has a place, the pain has a place, everything has a place, because of the unity. I'm going to stop here. But there was the trust. There was the potential in bearing witness of. We didn't have to see an outcome or control the outcome. That in that fullness, there is movement and there is goodness.
Right. There's something I would like to add from my perspective, because what you're describing, Virginia, is trust in the mystery. The potential that I feel in this kind of online group dialogue work, that we can hold it experientially with an intuitive awareness of what is happening between us. It's quite related to what Annette was saying, being here with all our senses, all our body, because my intuitive reality is not my mind. It needs all my antennas out there. And it's through my antennas, if I may use that word, that I'm aware that we are together here in something. It's not an idea of something. It's not a mental concept of something. But in that, because we are in this strange situation, seeing each other pixelated on screens, but I have to say, I feel the presence of you being fully human and being in my humanness with you, whatever that means. But that's how I sense it, and I sense it with all my body senses also. So that is a stepstone to really learn to trust this mystery also between us, not just in relationship to the big whole of the cosmos or whatever, but have it a living experience that allows me to train myself to be beyond my self focus. Because this shared space, this shared intersubjective space between us is a laboratory of collective humanness. And in that sense, it is a laboratory. It's a training ground to be aware, wait a moment, there's something bigger going on than myself. And it's not an idea, it's not a concept, I can sense it. And then we can investigate it, and this has implications for the dialogue work as we try to do it, but it has also consequences how we are or how we can be together as a global human family, to put it that way, or we as humans on this planet. And in that, I see this as a cultural practice of what we're doing, because there's a leverage beyond myself that this space gives me, and I cannot do that on my own. I cannot even meditate this on my own, or I cannot think about this. I need you in this shared space to be aware that this is real.
It's nice to see you, Isha, and also Monica.
Oh, here's Monica. Now I see you. Great. It's looking good to see you. Good to see you, Isha. All right.
I would say it's interesting too, because I think part of what you were expanding beyond the either or is in some ways part of what's held in this in this intuition, and our minds go in categories like this. So it calls for something, a bigger embrace with more of ourselves in order to be able to hold something beyond the either or. Like, okay, so you're different, so that means we're separate. And to be able to hold something that says you're different, but you're human, so we're the same and different. That we're talking about a more complex and differentiated unity. Not just unity means everything the same, and difference means anything different. And it's like no. But you can only hold that from the space that you were talking about. I think it's time to wrap up. We're a few minutes over. So thank you very much for joining us in this first free seminar on One World Bearing Witness. And February 18th, Sunday, February 18th is the next one. And we're going to talk about bearing witness to our Mother Earth. And, what does that mean? How do we take responsibility for climate change, for example? What does it mean to bear witness to the earth that created us from from which soil we have come. And so I hope to see you there, and yeah, and that we'll bring in some more people who were part of One World Bearing Witness in the process. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Elizabeth Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you a lot.
Thank
Thank you,
everybody.
Elizabeth Thomas. Thank you all.
Mm.
Thank you very much.
Mm.
Have a great day.